So, video time again. This one is going to be a little bit on the shorter side. Knock on wood. Anyway, it's a cold day in LA today. For February, it should be getting warmer, but it's not. As you can see, I'm wearing shoes because I'm so cold even indoors. Some of these previous videos, you see me in sandals or no sandals. So anyway, to launch into this video is about the late, dear Gloria Pall, my friend, someone who I will always be so proud to call my friend. Most of you know her, maybe not even for Twilight Zone, but for some other things that she did. She was known as a cameo queen of the 50s and 60s. Worked in Hollywood. She came to Hollywood in 1951, spring of 1951, passed away December 30th, 2012. And so she had a very long career, not so much in showbiz. Her showbiz career actually started in the 1940s when she was still in New York. She never lost her New York accent, even after so many years out here on the West Coast. She spent most of her professional life as a real estate agent, and I think she held her license right up until the end, or very close to it. But even after she stopped active real estate work, she was still had a hand in it. In the real estate world. She had, back in the 60s, her own firm on, I believe, Sunset Boulevard with a big purple. She loved the color purple, loved lavender, and with the sign, Call Paul. I don't know if that was the name of her. I think it was just the Gloria Pall Real Estate Agency, but that's what her sign said anyway. And she drove a lavender Thunderbird, lavender T-Bird. Not in her later years. In her later years, she drove a mid-sized sedan, four-door sedan. But in her heyday, she drove the T-Bird. I remember her telling me after I read her book. The title of the book was called I Bought and Sold O.J.'s Home in Bel Air. Oh, here goes my computer. Computers are crazy. Nobody uses laptops so much anymore, but they cause all kinds of problems. They're not well made anymore. They've got planned obsolescence, and they're filled with pop-up ads every single day. About this time, I need to turn them off, but I'm too lazy to do it. So anyway, back to Gloria. She was telling me, I read her book, I Bought and Sold O.J.'s Home in Bel Air, O.J. and Marguerite Simpson's home. It's a wonderful little book. I won't spoil it for any of you. I think you can maybe find a copy on eBay or something, but needless to say, that was in about 1978 when they sold the home, and I don't think she even ever saw O.J. Or Marguerite. They were already moved out by the time she and her then husband and son Jefferson moved into the place. And I remember she said, never before had I seen, and never would I ever see again, a home that was so rampaged, smashed, and trashed. The person who, I'm quoting her, she said the person who lived there, or one of them anyway, must have had some kind of deep-rooted emotional violence within themselves. But she also told me I knew every street of Beverly Hills and Bel Air because I used to zip up and down the hills in my T-Bird, showing homes and, checking on my listings. And she even had one of her, I think her first home that she built for herself. I don't think she lived in it terribly long. It was up in Nichols Canyon. So anyhow, she was, I think, known probably more for her role as a magazine. She was on, I think, 350 magazine covers, mostly men's magazines. I think the men's magazines back in those days were a little more tame than the ones are now, but it was kind of focused on They were a bit. I think tame is the best word I can come up with. But in those days, sex was definitely it had a much different meaning in the world. And I remember she told me, I never slept around, I never drank, I never swore. Never smoked, never drank, never swore, never slept around. The 4 S's. And I thought to myself, when she told me that, very early in our friendship, I just had to laugh. And I told other people, that I was in touch with her, and they laughed too. And so anyway, my story of how I met her was, of course, in these very lengthy Twilight Zone travels in planning for the first convention. She was one of the first people I got in touch with, because she had a website where she sold her autographs, and I emailed her, and of course she loved her fans dearly and was happy just to have friendships with many of them who lived in other parts of the world just by email. And so she and I became fast friends. I remember at the beginning it wasn't off to the best start in the world. I remember when as we drew nearer to the convention, a couple months out, she said, you better plan on advertising this thing, or we're all going to be sitting on our hands and knees. And that kind of made me angry, because I didn't have budget for that. And we were working with this other autograph show company, and I don't even know to this day how much they advertised it. I don't think they did very much, but I'll never know for sure. I never saw any of the ads, if there were any. At least, if that was done. But she was telling me, you got to advertise in the LA Times and the LA Daily News. You got to do that. And it's like, I don't have any money for this. I barely have, money for my plane fare and, some autographs, for, assuming nobody would give me any free autographs. And my hotel stay, I just didn't have, a couple extra $1,000 to spend on it, on advertising. So needless to say, that did not happen. But, so she came, and because I was so busy, I didn't really have a chance to talk to her much this weekend, but we did talk a little bit. And she said, I'll bet your parents are so proud of you, Andrew. And I said, yeah, I guess they are, And she said, are they here with you this weekend? I said, no, they're not. This, sci-fi conventions and whatever. Oh, shame on me. I shouldn't have called Twilight Zone a sci-fi show. But sci-fi conventions, or I think that's probably what I said. Sci-fi conventions are not really their thing. But she said, well, if you are ever in LA again, if you need a favor or something, just look me up. And I took her up on it. I don't think we kept in touch really for those 15 months between the convention and my moving to LA. But as soon as I got here, I think I sent her an email or something. I said, hi, I'm in town. And I think it was in about March or April of 2004 we met for the first time since then at the Beverly Garland Hotel coffee shop, which was right near where she lived. She never liked to travel far from home, and so we met there and we had a nice meal together. And she said, where are you staying right now? And I told her about it, and she said, well, I'll keep my eyes open for any place for you. If it sounds like you might like to have your own place again. And I said, yes, I certainly would, because I was living with someone else at the time. And she said, well, I'll keep my eyes open. And sure enough, several weeks later, I was in the Santa Monica Promenade. She called me on my cell phone. She said, Andrew, I think I've got a place for you. It's a room in a kind of medium or smallish size house. There's an older man who lives there. You can have it for $200 a month. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, wow, did I ever get the deal of the century? And it was that simple. I went and met the gentleman who turned out he was renting the house from his sister, and I was thinking he only wants $200 a month, because the going rate in those days was $400 or so. Not very much money. Nowadays it's like $1,000 or $1,200 if you want a room or in somebody's home. It's not cheap. Absolutely not. They'll charge you almost as much as an apartment nowadays. It's like they got you in a corner, got you over a barrel. But in those days, it was a little easier. So I moved into this place, and I lived there. Actually, no, I lived in the room for a while, but then the place had a wing, a kind of guest house in the back, which was much bigger. And that tenant moved out about 6 months later, so I lived in that guest house for another 4 years. And my rent was never more than $450 a month. It was raised over time, but it worked out very, very well. And thanks to her son Jefferson, in part, I got my first job in Los Angeles, which I held for many years. When I moved into that place, I was a little bit jobless. I did work, but it just the jobs I had were not really permanent or salaried. That's a more accurate way to say it. The jobs I had were not salaried jobs. So I got my first salaried job thanks to her son Jefferson. I had that job for many years, and it took me all over the country with travels, and so that was very nice. And then I changed careers, and then I moved on. But I will always be grateful both to Gloria and to Jefferson. And over the years that I knew her, we did a lot together. She introduced me to a lot of people, several of which were including Edson Stroll and Camille Franklin and some of the other Twilight Zone folks. But also to an organization called the Book Publicists of Southern California, which I attended regularly for about 5 years. They do meetings every 2 months at the Sportsman's Lodge in Studio City, and those were always such wonderful events. And she was there. She had a table, her own table, the Gloria Pall table, and I sat at her table every single time. And then I remember the last time I ever saw Gloria, and I had no reason whatsoever to think it would be the last time, but it was in summer of 2012, August of 2012. There was a meeting, and I drove her home from that meeting. Someone else had taken her to the meeting. I think her car was in the shop or something, and she needed a ride home, and I took her home. And, it was dark, and I walked her up to the doorstep, and we just stood there talking for like another half an hour. And, of course, I did talk with her, just by phone, after that. But that was the last time I ever saw her. The one thing I remember so candidly about her is, she always had impeccable manners. I think from growing up in the Great Depression and in a family that really enforced those kinds of things, she never failed to say thank you to me. She always said thank you or thanks a lot. Always, without fail. And so I remember, just as a surprise, a few years before she died, it was not long before Thanksgiving, I left like a surprise grocery bag of stuff on her porch. She loved her wine and her orange juice. She loved her $2 Chuck from Trader Joe's. I think it's now more like $3. Maybe it's $3 Chuck or $4 Chuck now. They couldn't afford to keep making it so cheaply. A couple bottles of that. A couple bottles of orange juice. She liked the orange juice, and some other stuff. And I called her the next day, and I said, Gloria, did you find like some of that bag on your porch this morning? And she said, how did you know that? I said, oh, I just guessed. And she goes, no. What's up? Are you the one who left that? And I said, yes. And she said, well, aren't you sweet? I said, well, I'll just tell you how it happened. I was at Trader Joe's, and they didn't have what I was looking for. I said, well, I know you probably need the wine, because she used to use it for muscle spasms in her back. She couldn't take NSAID drugs, or the over-the-counter drugs for pain, because it caused internal bleeding. So she kind of relied on this wine a little bit, but she never got drunk, of course. But it said that it helped her, and the orange juice. So she did have muscle spasm problems in her later years, especially due to stress and whatever else. So I just thought I would do a good. That was, I think, the week before Thanksgiving or the week of Thanksgiving. She also had a boyfriend for a few years before he passed away. His name was Ellsworth, And he was a most interesting guy, and she said, I wish I'd married him. Not then, but she said, I wish he'd come into my life a lot sooner. He was a widower, and he was about the best physically fit 80-something-year-old guy who I'd ever run across, and for her as well. And for about 3 years, they were very close. They never shacked up together. They never lived together. But it was a good way to, he died a good 5 or 6 years before she did. But it was a very good friendship for her. And I remember she used to, run around promoting him. He'd written books as she had, and she used to take him. She connected him with a lot of people. She was very good for that. She connected me to a lot of people. She connected him to a lot of people to help sell his books. And when he passed away, she was actually included in on his estate a little bit, and so that was very nice of him as well. She knew everybody. She had a very impressive roster of clients, real estate clients, and I remember we went to an autograph show together, not related to Twilight Zone, but we got there and we got her table set up, and she was looking around the room. She said, Andrew, I know almost everybody here. And mind you, that show was not well attended as far as fans, autograph buyers, or autograph collectors, but the celebrities, she knew everybody there, and she'd go around. She went around like with her own index cards. She collected autographs too, and collected their autographs, and so, and she got them for free. I don't think they even charged her. And I remember Jeff Conaway coming over. He was one of the younger celebrities there, but I remember Jeff Conaway coming over to her table, and they were talking, and he looked he had the end of his life was so terrible, and he was so sick. But I remember, that day anyway, he looked so vibrant. He almost looked like a bodybuilder. He looked so vibrant and healthy, and I think he probably was. And then after that, of course, in the news, it just showed him, going down into celebrity rehab with Dr. Drew and all this other crap. But I remember he came over, and we were talking about, Taxi, and he was a really lovely guy. Jeff Conaway was. And what was he on, Babylon 5 or one of those shows like that? But I will always be so glad that I knew her, because she was really, I don't think I'd be sitting here, today, if it hadn't been for her. So I will always be grateful to her, and I told her that a couple of times, not too many times, but and I think she knew I meant it. So, but we used to have some wonderful phone conversations. She liked to call up and leave messages when I didn't answer the phone or too busy to talk or something. She'd always leave messages, or she'd send me an email, and her emails weren't usually long. I don't think she typed really, but she used to leave me these long voicemails, long involved voicemails, and that was always funny. I used to help her list her stuff on eBay. She said, Andrew, I really got to get back on eBay, I got to sell some of this stuff. I've got all these books and lobby cards and photos and DVDs. She had these DVDs about her career made up, and they were great. She said, I got to get on there and sell some of this stuff. And one time I remember she made, about $500 of the Twilight Zone trading cards. That's actually how our friendship kind of began, because I connected her to Rittenhouse Archives. Now, I know there's somebody else out there who claims that they did it, but I got the paycheck, and thus it started our friendship. Commission paycheck, But Gloria, of course, got her paycheck for signing those cards. So that's really what started it, the friendship. And I think because of that, she said, if you're ever in LA, give me a call. If you're ever in town again, give me a call, and I certainly did. So, but I remember she was on eBay a lot, and she used to buy back some of her old, men's magazines and stuff that she was, on the cover of. So, yeah, it was just fantastic. being friends with her, gosh, I knew her for 10 years. And she was basically the same she was never sick until the very, very end. And she went into an assisted care facility for the last, I think, maybe month or so of her life. And sadly, I didn't get to talk to her. I talked to her a few weeks before she passed away. And then I don't think she was in good enough shape to talk. I heard from someone else, falsely, erroneously, that she was going to be coming back home, or that she'd already come back home, and then I don't think she ever did. I think that was false information, and then she passed away. And I remember going to her memorial service a few weeks later, which was very good, and there were a number of speakers who got up and talked about her, and it was really a nice. And then this friend of hers wrote a song about her that started, Gloria Pall, statuesque and tall, with a lavender mystique. When the good Lord created her, He made her so very unique. And she wrote this song, and I wish Gloria had lived to hear it, because she would have been so flattered, and she would have, she would have sold copies of this woman, this friend of hers, singing the song. And so this friend of hers, we were in the church, and she's up, this friend of hers was up, who wrote the song, was up in the front of the church with her synthesizer, and she's playing the synthesizer and singing the song, and I felt this terrible lump in my throat. I remained collected, but afterwards I came home and I just cried. Well, anyway, so much for that. But it was weird. I didn't, when I first found out that she passed away, but it took a few weeks before it really hit me. So I will always be, I could talk a lot more about her, but needless to say, one other thing. She always told me, Andrew, don't outlive your money. Words to live by. I don't know if she did or not herself, but that's what she always told me. She said, don't outlive your money. And as I think I mentioned in another video, she loved the Twilight Zone marathons. She always watched them, and she knew everybody in those episodes, or had crossed paths with them at some point. She knew so many of those other actors and who were in those episodes. Either they were her real estate clients, or she just kind of knew them, or knew who they were, or something. But as I say, I will always be proud to call her my friend, and I'm still in touch with her son Jefferson. I talk to him every now and again, and he's a fine person, and I'm sure we'll be friends for a long time to come. So anyhow, so this is my tribute video to Gloria Pall, who in a way was responsible for so much of the success that I had in the Twilight Zone realm. So Gloria, wherever you are, I and many other of your fans love you and revere you, and we shall definitely meet again in the Twilight Zone. And that was another thing she said a couple times. She said, whenever I go off to the Twilight Zone, whenever that day happens to come, and then she finished the sentence with, whatever it was, whatever thought she was thinking. But I think one of them was, what am I going to do with all my stuff? Because she had a lot of memorabilia and stuff from the past. And she said, whenever I go off to the Twilight Zone, I don't know what's going to happen to all my showbiz memorabilia. So I always thought that was kind of funny. So anyhow, this is my video about Gloria Pall, and I think it was not exactly a short video, but I think I've covered just about everything. So thank you very much.